Today we are taking a look at the Royal Canin Diabetic adult dog food, and we're not only going to be reviewing the food, but we are going to take a comprehensive look at diabetes, your dog's condition, and how you can manage it a bit better, because in our experience diabetes in dogs is devastating, and we see it all the time that lots of people with dogs with this condition do not understand it fully, and as a result dogs leave their side very soon. So we do not want that to happen to you, so please pay attention. Now there's a couple things that Royal Canin says on the back of the packet, and they are very important. They are arguably the most important things whenever it comes to diabetes. They say that our diabetic dog does not produce sufficient insulin or cannot utilize it normally, so their blood sugar levels elevate, and these can cause many health issues such as diabetes, pancreatitis, or chronic diabetes, or a pre-diabetes condition. They also say that every time your dog eats, and me and you eat for that matter, that results in a rise of blood glucose levels, of sugar levels. In diabetic dogs, the goal is to maintain the levels within a safe range throughout the day. What we do not want is very high spikes in blood glucose, because your dog's pancreas isn't secreting enough insulin or isn't regulating blood sugar levels correctly, because their pancreas isn't working properly. So let's explore diabetes a bit more closely to understand the condition so that you can help your diabetic dog a lot better. So diabetes is a disorder of metabolism. That is the way your dog's body uses digested food for growth and energy. Most of the food people eat is broken down into glucose, and this is true in dogs as well, the form of sugar in the blood. Anytime we use the term glucose, that means sugar. Glucose is the main source of fuel for the body, so everything is going to be converted into glucose, into sugar, for the body to be able to use it. Diabetes then occurs when glucose sugar builds up in the blood due to the pancreas not producing enough insulin or not using it correctly, resulting in low energy levels. Insulin is a hormone that your body's cells need to be able to absorb glucose, and it's the same with your dog. After food that we eat is digested, glucose passes into the bloodstream. For glucose to get into cells to produce energy, insulin needs to be present. The pancreas is supposed to automatically produce the right amount of insulin to move glucose from blood into the cells. In dogs with diabetes, the pancreas either produces little or no insulin. The cells do not respond to the insulin that is produced. The glucose then builds up in the blood, and the body naturally tries to get rid of excess glucose from the body by filtering the blood. The excess glucose overflows into the urine and passes out of the body, so the body loses its main source of fuel, even though the blood contains large amounts of glucose. So if your dog is peeing a bit more than usual, this means that their body is not using glucose correctly and is getting excreted out without being utilized. And this is a very clear example of diabetes in dogs. The one thing that a lot of people, and vets for that matter, do not disclose to us is that dogs can actually make their own blood sugar, their own sugar from protein and fat in a process called gluconeogenesis. So they do not need technically any dietary carbohydrates whatsoever. They do not need any starches whatsoever to convert into glucose, so they can get by just eating protein and fat, and they can make their own glucose, their own energy, without having to eat any carbohydrates whatsoever. So now that we understand the condition a little bit more, let's review Royal Canin and see whether this food is good, bad, or what we make out of it. Now the first ingredient is dehydrated poultry protein, and this, in my opinion, is the first thing that I don't like. Whenever we give our dogs any food whatsoever, we want traceability. What we want is to know precisely what's going into our dog. And poultry is quite unspecific. We don't know whether that's chicken or it's anything else because they don't tell you. They conceal that information, and I am not a fan of that. The second ingredient is barley. The third ingredient is wheat gluten. The fourth is maize gluten. So in the first 4 ingredients, 3 are very high in the glycemic index. They spike insulin levels and are high refined carbohydrates. So barley, wheat gluten and maize gluten are highly refined carbohydrates. Let me give you an example. If you were diabetic, your GP, your doctor, would not advise you to eat highly refined starches. So you would try to cut down on pasta, on hamburgers, or anything highly refined, anything that can potentially elevate your blood sugar levels, because that's going to be detrimental to your body, because your pancreas again is not releasing enough insulin or utilizing it correctly for your blood sugar levels to be level and for your body to be able to cope with whatever you eat whenever you eat it. So barley, wheat gluten and maize gluten, in my opinion, are foods and ingredients that I would want in a dog's food, even if the dog were 100% normal, let alone in a diabetic dog. I don't think these ingredients are good at all. We then get vegetable fibers, and those are a form of fiber. We get hydrolyzed animal protein. Again, hydrolyzation is the process of breaking down molecules with water so that the body gets them absorbed a lot easier. But the problem here is that it's animal proteins. Again, these are very unspecific. We don't know where they come from, and what we want again is traceability. We then get animal fats, and again, these are animal fats. We do not know whether those are coming from beef, from lamb, from venison, or where from. We have no idea. Animal fats, we do not know. We then get into beet pulp, which is a form of sugar. The last thing a diabetic person or dog needs is any form of sugar whatsoever that is external. That wouldn't be very, very wise, in my opinion. If you started putting sugar or a sugar derivative in your coffee as a diabetic, that wouldn't be the right way to tackle diabetes properly, and that's my opinion. We then get tapioca, and tapioca is a high glycemic carbohydrate. It again spikes insulin levels, and it's not very good for a dog with diabetes. Another thing that I don't like about this food is fructooligosaccharides, and fructooligosaccharides is a form of sugar, and it's a form of sugar that is put into dog food to make it more palatable. There are arguments by manufacturers that say that fructooligosaccharides or that any other carbohydrates. I hear some manufacturers say, for example, that rice is a source of protein and a source of fiber. But again, at the end of the day, a fructooligosaccharide is a sugar derivative. And if your dog has diabetes and is struggling to convert sugar, carbohydrates into energy, the last thing we want is to put sugar, any excess sugar, into our dog's body, because again, your dog produces their own blood sugar from protein and fat exclusively without the need for carbohydrates. Now, they can absorb some carbohydrates, they can convert carbohydrates into energy, but too many carbohydrates, too many highly refined carbohydrates aren't going to be good for your dog. Now, the high levels of carbohydrates that this food has, the high levels of high glycemic carbohydrates this food contains, doesn't make it suitable for a dog with diabetes, in my opinion, and that will be the full verdict. Now, we have put and developed a guide for diabetic dogs that doesn't contain barley, wheat gluten, or any tapioca or any excess sugar, and we think that that is the best way to feed a diabetic dog. From now on, I want you to read everything you give your diabetic dog, because diabetes is a very, very serious issue. It's a really, really complicated and delicate issue, and I want your dog to be with you for as long as possible. So if you see anything highly refined or anything that is going to spike insulin levels, like rice, wheat, barley, corn, anything like that, try to avoid it. Try to go for low glycemic carbohydrates if you must give them to your dog. For example, certain fruits and vegetables are a lot better suited for a diabetic dog than any rice or any wheat, gluten or barley will ever dream to be. If you want access to our diabetic guide, we will put a link down below so you can take a look at it, and I honestly think that you should pay attention to everything you give your dog, irrespective of who recommends the food. Even if your vet has recommended something like this, or even if something says diabetic or whatever, you must first understand the condition and make decisions based on the very ingredients of the food and treats you give your dog. Do not trust labels just by label's sake, and do not trust anything blindly. Always fact check everything you see, and your dog will be a lot better off as a result. Now, please let me know if you have any questions down below. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.